俺を刺すのは刺されたくなければ避けておるわ。無駄なことを。血が消えた。ストロングライト。世界のトップも欲しいか。うちの船長の首をよ。待て、やめろ。なんか変だ。おい、誰か動けねえか。いや、それが無理なんで。科学でなければ悪魔の実の力。
お前が父を殺したんだ、サターン。
クマか。あいつは生まれながらに奴隷階級、絶滅種バッカニア族の生き残り。ボニー。
Alrighty then, so the first round of Saturn versus the Strawhats plus Bonney was pretty exciting. I definitely liked how it came out in the anime. Throughout these scenes we see Saturn's abilities, and some of them are pretty overpowered, but he's also a mythical Zoan, so some things make sense here, although not everything is actually part of the mythical Zoan power package. Also, I have to put an asterisk on it. We think he's a mythical Zoan, but there's a significant portion of the community that does not think that this is actually a mythical Zoan and there's something else going on. Just gotta put that out there. Anyway, in this sequence we end up seeing quite a few powers that Saturn has, specifically the eye beams that can do crazy damage, and the strange aura ability that is able to keep everyone down. It's pretty funny because he is based on a very specific yokai. Like, those abilities, like, they're not exactly the easiest things to read from the yokai. Like the concussive eye beams, that's not really something you can say that particular yokai is famous for. Regardless, one thing that I found really interesting about the abilities that Saturn does show is that he doesn't really move a lot. It actually really helps this idea that this guy doesn't want to expend more energy than he needs to expend. And of course, here we also see the regen power. Now this regen power, it's causing a lot of trouble in the manga right now. Like, it's the next big power that the characters have to figure out how to beat. Like, if you remember the Logias, that's pretty much what this regen power has become. You had to find a way to destroy this power. If it's not hockey, you're gonna have to find like some other really cool little solution, kind of like how Crocodile had a very specific weakness to water. Now let me go one step further and talk a little bit more about my personal feelings about this sequence. I was kind of sad when I initially read this in the manga because it's like, oh man, I kind of wish that the Straw Hats weren't getting beaten as easily as they were here. Going to the eye beam, that concussive power that he uses to shoot people around. You know, when you see Sanji get hit by it, like, frick man, he got blown back, and then he's also one of the people that can't really move after being hit by the aura. One thing I do want to say about Sanji is that he was hit without his exoskeleton on, so it really does make you wonder, would that concussive power have been effective versus exoskeleton Sanji? Maybe we'll get an opportunity to see that later on. One thing about the aura power, the one that's restraining everyone, I think this is probably one of the powers that could probably be beaten if someone has a high enough hockey level. That's the kind of vibe that particular power gives me. Now for the regen. Here we see that the blood disappears, and Franky goes out to acknowledge that. I think he did that in the manga as well. After recent events in the manga, and like, this is minor spoilers, so like, if you don't want to be here, like, please. I'm starting to think, like, if you think about it, blood disappearing doesn't really make sense with regen. Regen would just close the wound. There is no reason for spilled blood to go back into the body with regen. Not like regen if you take it at the hardest definition. I actually think, especially with something that happens later on, this is actually more like returning to the previous state. It's like a rejection of any kind of change. There was an interesting chapter a few weeks ago that was something like movement in the stillness, or movement in the silence, or stirring in the silence. And I'm starting to wonder if people like Saturn they're held in this particular state, so anything he receives just gets rejected. Now, one last thing that was really awesome in this moment, I couldn't really show it because copyright and whatnot, but Saturn recognizes that the Straw Hats work together. That was pretty cool. Franky going in there and pushing Luffy out of the way, then grabbing him back. Franky in this arc was just so good, and I'm so excited to see all the moments for Franky in this arc, man. Like, I'm just excited. It was so good for him. Like, seeing Franky there being active, man, it was, I was so happy. I was 100% in. That was one of my favorite moments in this sequence, even though they're getting beaten, one of my favorite moments. Anyway, everyone, thank you for watching this short clip. Till next time.